You're listening to Level Up Your Business, the podcast where we talk to hardworking business owners and leaders and help them solve real issues in real time. I'm your host, Sara Frasca, restaurant owner, keynote speaker, and business coach. I've spent my career not only in corporate America, but also as an entrepreneur, carrying on my family's legacy through my restaurant. Now, a business coach and consultant, I'm helping other businesses to use creative problem solving and innovative thinking to drive lasting change. Stay tuned to hear some inspiring guidance that will help you to level up your business. All right. Well, today I wanted to join and just really welcome Craig Goldenfarb. Craig, thank you for being a part of our Point Northeast Level Up Your Business podcast.
My pleasure, Sarah. Great to be here.
Yeah, and it's good to see you. I know it hasn't been too long since I've seen you in person. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm in West Palm Beach, Florida at my main office operations.
Great. I know you go around speaking and stuff, so I wasn't sure if you were in your office or on location somewhere else. So good. Well, you and I have known each other for a while, but I'll just set up for our listeners a little bit about the podcast, and hopefully they've joined us on other episodes. But really, we are trying to get a sense from business owners, from business leaders, where they've been, what has helped them in their decision-making along their path and where they are today, and then really where they want to go to in the future. And if we can be of help in ideas today, or, I'm the host today. Sometimes we have several of us, but, it would be fun to brainstorm in the moment with you if there's an opportunity. So again, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So with that, you and I are well acquainted. I've known you for many, many years, but can you share with our viewers and listeners a little bit about your history? Why did you decide to become an attorney?
Well, I grew up on the west coast of Florida, and I had the wonderful distinction in the 1970s of being raised by a mother who happened to be an attorney. And in the 70s, there weren't a lot of female attorneys. So I had an interesting role model at my house of a very strong and very smart woman who I discovered at an early age I was a lot like her. And as I watched her struggle and fight as a female, as a criminal defense attorney in Clearwater, Florida, I was really inspired to follow in her footsteps. And as I grew up, I realized I was good at debating, and I liked to have the logical and analytical part of my brain being used a lot, like my mom. So I decided to follow in her footsteps and had a neat journey along the way.
It's great. It's really great. Have you always practiced in Florida?
I have. I went off to college in North Carolina and then came back to law school at the University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida. And then I moved down to Miami to start my career when I was about 26 years old.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. And I know you're a dad, a proud dad. So what about your personal world?
Sure. Well, I'm a father of two girls, age 21 and 23. Neither of them is interested in law, which I'm fine with. Would have been okay either way. One's in college and one's just out of college. I've been married for 25 years and celebrated my 25th year anniversary last week. And I live here in a city called Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, which is about 10 minutes or 15 minutes north of West Palm Beach on the East Coast. That's
great. And congratulations on your anniversary.
Thank you.
That's a huge deal.
It is.
Yes. Well, okay. So you became an attorney, and then how did you decide you wanted to open your own practice? Because of course there are many, many different types of, law that you can practice. And then there's this scary component of being an entrepreneur, opening your own office.
Well, I tell a joke, and please everybody take this as a joke, that I actually slept my way to the top. So what I mean by that coarse joke is that I dated a girl while I was in law school who was getting her master's degree in journalism at the University of Florida. So she was not in law school. After a week or two of dating her, I realized her dad was a lawyer. And that's not why I started dating her. I didn't even know, really. So as I was going through law school and she was finishing up getting her master's degree in journalism, we got pretty serious. And we dated my final year of law school at the University of Florida. And it was her final year getting her master's degree. So we got pretty serious. And with my 2.8 GPA in law school, yeah, I did say it, 2.8, I didn't get a lot of interviews. out of law school with any of the good law firms because I had such a crappy GPA. So her father took me to dinner towards the end of our my law degree and said, "So I heard you're getting a lot of interviews." And after I stopped laughing, he said, "Well, hey, loser, are you serious about my daughter?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm serious about your daughter." And he said, "Why don't you come to work for me in Miami?" And I said, "You're a personal injury lawyer, right?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I guess since I don't have any other offers, maybe I'll take you up on yours." So I literally did sleep my way to the top. In that's how I got my job offer, and that I was dating my girlfriend. And so he hired me. And the blessing of that was that he became a mentor for me and taught me, when he brought me down to his personal injury firm in Miami, what I didn't realize was how lucky I was going to be, because he gave me an education both in business and in law. And what was so great about that was that he ran a large business, and he had come from a business background and a business law firm before he started being a personal injury attorney. So he knew how to run a business, but he also had a good trial law firm. So he turned me over to his trial attorneys, who taught me how to be a lawyer, and he mentored me as to how to be a businessman. So what I say is I got a dual degree in law. I got a business mentorship from my father-in-law, and I learned how to be a trial lawyer in 5 years. Mm-hmm. So at the end of those 5 years, I could kind of write my ticket because I knew how to do both. So I moved up to West Palm Beach from Miami. In the meantime, I had married his daughter, who is still my wife. And after working in another law firm for a couple of years, in 2002, I decided to go out on my own. And that was about 22 years ago. And I've never looked back. So using the mentorship that I so greatly got from my father-in-law, who is still my mentor and still one of my best friends, he taught me that dual degree I mentioned before in business and law. So that really set me on a path to understanding where my happy place was. Was it being a lawyer? Was it being a business person, or was it being both? Mm-hmm. And after about 10 years, I realized it was really being a business person. Mm-hmm. So that's why I decided to take the CEO route instead of the trial lawyer route, even though I had been a trial lawyer for 10 years.
That's an interesting, I love how you've set it up, because some owners still want to do the trial lawyer route. They let someone else run their business. Maybe there's a back end COO or someone else, but they don't necessarily want to get in on the business side. So tell me a little bit more about that business side.
Sure. When I speak about this choice, I talk about a continuum. And the continuum on one side is full-time CEO. On the other side is full-time lawyer. And there's no wrong answer for where you are on that continuum. You could be either on one side or the other, or somewhere in the middle. And if one of your favorite things to do is go to court, be in trial, do depositions, then don't give that up. But that wasn't my happy place. I realized after 10 years that my happy place was sitting at my desk, being in meetings. And I know this sounds weird, but being in meetings and running the show.
Yeah.
So if you are really an entrepreneur and that's where your happy place is, make it your path and your vision to get there. And that's what I did starting 15 years ago. And now I'm there, which is I haven't handled a case in over 10 years, literally over 10 years. I haven't touched one case, but that's because that's where I want to be. You can surf the middle of the continuum. You can. It's just that you need to surround yourself with people who are on one side or the other. Because if you're going to surf right in the middle, then you're going to have a lot of business things to do, but you're going to have a lot of cases to work on. So you need to surround yourself with people who just do the business, and surround yourself on the other side with people who just do the law.
Right.
So you can place yourself anywhere on that continuum you want, as long as you understand you're there, and then surround yourself on both sides with people who fill in the gaps.
I think that's great. I see a lot of people struggling, whether they're in law or in another type of business, with that really hard kind of soul searching of where do I want to be on this continuum? And then as they're looking at their people, perhaps a leadership team, their trusted advisors around them, it's hard for them to fit those people in around them, because as they've grown, they were doing everything. And so they start to kind of narrow their spectrum, and those people maybe don't fit perfectly around them. Do you see the same?
I do. You have to really know yourself to know where the gaps are. I had
Yeah.
a business coach once who said, show me your schedule and I'll show you your priorities. So you tend to do the things that you like doing. So if your schedule is mostly business stuff and you're basically at peace with yourself, it means you really like the business.
Mhm.
If it's mostly legal stuff, then you probably are leaning towards being an attorney. So unless you're forcing yourself to do stuff you hate, take a look at your schedule because that usually shows where you have pressed the easy button. If you don't do any business stuff, it means you don't like it.
That
So
makes sense.
it just makes sense. So
Yeah.
that's why you don't do any business stuff is because you don't enjoy it. So you
Right.
maybe need a COO or even a CEO or a CFO, the C-level staff to come in and run that part of your show, but you need them. You can't run a show just as an attorney alone.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Okay, so you were growing and you were deciding kind of at this 10-year mark that you wanted to go the CEO route. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, how did that evolution go for you? What did
Sure.
you
Well,
do?
luckily I had a mentor who kind of helped guide me. And at that point, I was already in some groups that in the legal industry and in other industries we call mastermind groups. So mastermind groups, as everyone knows, are groups of like-minded people who have a similar interest, who like to share. So there are lots of lawyer groups that are masterminds. So I started entering a couple of masterminds and I started listening and asking questions like, if you don't want to be doing your own accounting or QuickBooks, what do you do? So that's a good example of a business task, a major task that you want to offload. So what do you do? Do you hire a part-time bookkeeper? Do you hire an in-house bookkeeper? Do you pay someone to come in twice a week? Do you hire a CFO immediately, chief financial officer? So that's a good example of a business sector of your company that you may hate. So what do you do? Do you still do it, or how do you offload it? You could even do it with a VA, virtual assistant. So that's an example of when meeting with a mastermind, you just bounce ideas off other people, and you find that a lot of people have solved the problem that you're looking to solve. So to me, it wasn't about me figuring out myself. It was having the courage and the knowledge, I guess, to surround myself with people who face the same issues.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So some folks, and I'm just going to pause on the mastermind for a minute because again, whatever industry someone is in, I have found that people put up a wall because they're too afraid to be vulnerable, to be open and honest, because someone might come in and threaten their business. How have you dealt with that? What types of masterminds or what solutions have you come up with?
Well, honestly, one of the first books I read, I think, when I was young in one of the various life coaching courses I had was called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And that book talks about the abundance mindset versus the scarcity mindset. And if you approach life with fear that someone's going to steal something, you're really limiting yourself in so many areas of your life. And fear is a natural response to so many things. But in this situation, if you really see that if you meet with people, that the chances of it coming back to harm you are so small in reality. I mean, I coach some lawyers in my hometown
Mm-hmm.
that are personal injury lawyers, that are competitors. But I find that, does it come back to haunt me? Do they take a little bit of market share? I don't know. I don't care because I know it comes back to help me in so many other areas of my life that it's not like I coach all my competitors
Yeah.
and I pick and choose. I am careful and I keep my trade secrets. But in general, I'm a pretty transparent, open, vulnerable guy. And I find that that just leads to a happier, richer life. And that book was one of the starting points for how are you going to view your life from a scarcity mindset that everything can go away, or an abundance mindset, which is the more you give, the more you get.
Yeah. Well, and I don't ever mean to besmirch anyone else's character, but there are a lot of egos in this particular industry. And I have found you to be one of those people who has this sincerity and this genuine interest to really kind of make everybody around you better. And so I do want to say, I mean, it's been an honor to work with you and to get to know you. You give back in so many ways.
Well,
Can you
thank
talk
you.
about, yes, I mean, I really mean it. Can you talk about a little, of that coaching? Like, what are you coaching them on?
Sure. Well, I have some private coaching clients, and I only take about 6 because I have a few businesses. I'm kind of busy. But on those particular clients, those are lawyers who maybe have 5 to 10 staff. Maybe their gross revenues are 2 to 5 million, or less. and they're facing problems in growth or scaling problems that they can't scale. So I want to take a firm of that size and maybe grow it to 50 people or 40 people and maybe 10 million in revenues. So they're facing business problems that I've already been through, and that it's easy for me to tell them how I got there and to give them the tools to get there. And that makes me feel really happy to help some other personal injury firm, because in my view, they're helping their clients. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is helping people against insurance companies. So if I can help a lawyer in Virginia fight the insurance companies equally to me, then I'm helping out all of that person's clients and fulfilling one of my goals in life.
Yeah, that's really great, Craig. And I think like-minded people are often drawn to each other. I feel a very similar set of philosophies for my own world, as a restaurant owner, which, I own a small restaurant, but I have the same philosophy. I mean, if I can help another restaurant owner to not have the same issues, I mean, it's a good feeling all around. It's a win-win. I would do anything to help people through those pitfalls. So
yeah, it's just, that's part of who I am. And so I teach as much as I can, and I get a lot out of it personally, and I spend a lot of my time helping others. And another cool quote I had heard within the last year is, the world is a mirror. So if you give out great stuff, it's going to reflect even brighter back to you. And I thought, hey, that's kind of a trite saying, but it's kind of cool and kind of makes sense that the more you give out, the brighter it shines back. And I love these little, I love memes. So that's probably a good meme that works as well.
The other one that might work for you is the golden rule, which actually fits your branding.
Right. It does actually. Yep. That's true. That's a good point. It is. Yep. That's very helpful. It does.
So, okay. So we talked a little bit about coaching and how you were building. I mean, any other milestones between kind of that 10-year, like I want to be a CEO on that side of the spectrum, to now, like any other big milestones, any other big things in your growth?
Sure. Actually, I measure some of the milestones by some of the tools that I began to use. So for instance, 6 years ago or 7 years ago, I got a software program for my personal injury law firm called Filevine. And that was one of the first cloud-based software systems for personal injury attorneys. And because I run my firm based mostly on data, or what we call KPIs, key performance indicators, Filevine has such a good data gathering section of it, like the whole thing you can run reports on. So I could all of a sudden start to run reports on everything, which is really my personality. I love data and I love reporting. So one evolution of this law firm occurred just 6-7 years ago, which was changing software platforms, which was Filevine. And then a few years later, as you know, I started to read about EOS, based on traction, and that book. And then, through that came my relationship with you. So I'd already had a basis of being centered around data. But then once I started working on an EOS-based system and then hired you, Sarah, as a coach, we started getting a corporate and accountability structure through that book and an EOS-based structure that supplemented and complemented the already data-based company that I was running. So the marriage of the data gathering and the structure and accountability system, those two things, I'd say, were both monumental leaps in my ability to have a very profitable and very well-functioning company.
Yes, that's great. It's really great. I mean, another one of the things that strikes me about you is that you're humble enough to know that you don't have all the answers. And so I feel like you're a bit of a constant learner. You are seeking outside influence, seeking other viewpoints, and you, as you well know, I love Traction. I think it's, one of the best books out there for an operating system that we can adopt. So very aligned with you on that. And just again, kudos for, being willing to keep learning.
I think that being a lifelong learner is part of that abundance mindset that I mentioned earlier, because one of the reasons people don't want to keep learning is out of some set of fear, which is they're scared of change, and they're scared of breaking something or breaking something that seems to be working in some way. So, the worst phrase in the corporate mentality is that's how we've always done it, right? The worst, I think it's 5 words, the worst 5 words in a company. That's how we've always done it. So That phrase doesn't exist here at my company because another cool meme, if it ain't broke, break it. I love that one. That was from John Morgan, who runs a fairly large law firm. He actually was the first guy I heard say that almost 25 years ago. He probably stole it from somebody, but a great phrase, if it ain't broke, break it, because you never want to just continue a system that is just, that's how we've always done it. So we encourage people here at my company to always question why we're doing something and see if they can build a better mousetrap. So again, I think the foundation really is that abundance mentality, which leads you to lifelong learning and leads you to always be open to suggestions and changes. And I am in at least 4 masterminds right now. And one of them is not even in the legal industry. It's just cross-business masterminds. So even going outside of the legal industry to learn concepts. And to me, that's fun. I really like learning from really smart people in other industries and within our own industry.
It's really great. It's really great. So now I'm going to kind of look forward. I mean, what does the future hold for Gold Law? What do you see as coming up? Where do you want to go? That sort of kind of vein.
Well, we've got, I have 2 offices here in South Florida. People ask, do you want to be huge? How big do you want to be? 10 offices, 50 offices? And I ask myself that question a lot. And I'm not an empire builder, so I don't need more than 2 offices unless some opportunity comes up that makes sense. But so I say that I have 2 castles because I have 2 offices. I want to keep polishing those 2 castles. So I'm not a big fan of a 3rd castle, and I don't want to be all over the country. I just want to be in Florida. I really want to have 2 offices, maybe a 3rd someday if it makes sense. But I want to keep polishing my castles and making them as perfect as they can be. So my personal vision is to continue to grow in my geographic area, which is Southeast Florida, and to keep perfecting what I have. Now, that will come with growth of staff. We have 80 staff right now, about 10 lawyers. That will come with growth, but I always say growth is the byproduct of excellence. And to me, that's been true. If I focus on quality first and excellence, growth is a byproduct of that. I do not want to grow and then suffer a lack of quality, but beneath the growth. So growth is not a goal. Growth is a result of polishing and excellence. So that's how I view it, a little bit backwards than some entrepreneurs.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I would say, I think that's really evident as well. I know your team so well, so I can say this. They also believe in excellence. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the culture and kind of, the fact that you've built core values that everyone buys into. And
yeah, I also do that backwards. So a lot of people say growth is the number one measure of success, and I would disagree. I say excellence is one of the measures of success, which results in growth. And the second thing that results in growth is firm culture. So I do that one backwards too, which is that I think if we have excellence and a great firm culture, those 2 things are going to join, leading to growth. So the first is excellence, and that's just high quality work product. And the second is culture. And what I mean by culture is I have one sentence. Do they like to get up out of bed and come to work in the morning? And if most or all of my staff enjoy getting out of bed, if it's not a moan, if it's not, oh gosh, I got to go to work. If it's, this is a pleasant place, I've chosen to spend my next 8 hours, then that's a victory for me. So what I did early on is I made what I considered to be quite a smart hire, which was about 12 years ago. I hired someone who was in culture and development at Disney World to run my office. Now, Disney World, as you may know, they have the Disney Academy. They charge over $100,000 to train other companies in how to have a great firm culture. Well, I got it for free because I took someone from Disney World who had already been trained, and I had her come working for me. So she started to implement policies, procedures, and systems to make sure everybody was happy. Today, we've actually divided out HR from culture. We have a culture and people team with separate employees, including her, and all they're responsible for is employee happiness. And we call it employee happiness and satisfaction. So we have all these initiatives, all these programs that are solely responsible for making our people wake up in the morning and want to come to work. So I'm lucky that I have enough staff and I'm big enough that I can have a culture team.
Really
But even
great.
if you have 3 people in your office, 3, you can have someone devote an hour a week or half an hour a week to coming up with something that will make all 3 people happy, whether it's just going out for drinks or whether it's additional time off or some team building. It doesn't matter how big you are as a company at all. You can focus some of your energy on making sure they like their jobs.
It's great. It's really great and very important. I do agree. Okay, switching gears for a second, I just want to ask you a little bit about marketing because, you started with a different name, and a couple of years ago you changed, and I think that's one of the most brilliant things you've done, in my opinion. But I was there when you guys decided. So, can you talk a little bit about that evolution
Sure.
and why?
Well, again, not something I came up with. In many industries, there is the concept of branding. And most professional corporations, whether it's lawyers, doctors, accountants, the egos at the top want their names on the door. So it's always Smith, Jones, and Johnson or law offices of Craig Goldenfarb in my situation. And that's not sustainable when you grow as far as branding, and it's not easy to remember, especially when you add another partner, because then it would be Goldenfarb and Smith and Goldenfarb and Smith and Frasca. And then ultimately it gets diluted. So your brand is something that gets diluted if it includes names. Plus, it's hard for people to remember. Even the good law firms in my town, they're all people's names. But if you figure out a way to brand, you can brand an idea, you can brand a core value, you can brand your name if it's brandable. Mine happened to be brandable. My name's Goldenfarb, so we changed over to Gold Law. Now, Gold Law can be independent of me. And now people don't call and expect me. They're buying a brand and a type of service that has become synonymous in the community with good legal service, giving back to the community, etc. So the Gold Law brand with a logo, as you see on my screensaver, has become synonymous with the way we want to be looked at in the community. So there's a great book called Story Branding, or the Story Brand, which was one of the evolutions of our brand, is figuring that out. Another great book, and that's an example of some reading or research I do or learning in across industry area, because that book has to do with any industry. So it talks about the importance of a brand. Most doctors, most lawyers, most professionals, they don't even know what a brand is. So they're too busy with the ego of their name. And so that was part of the evolution of branding our law firm. It came with a jingle, it came with a logo that you see, and it comes with all sorts of elements of a brand. There are lots of elements, including color, design, music, et cetera, et cetera.
I don't suppose you'd sing the jingle for us, would you?
Sure, it's pretty easy because it's my phone number, which is also branded. So I have a phone number in 5 area codes, which is 222-2222. So actually one night as we were starting our branding, I wanted to know some jingle that had 7 notes. So all I did is I typed into Google 7-note song. And as I saw the results, I realized that one of everybody's things they learned as a little kid was the shave and a haircut 2 bits, which goes 2 2 2 2 2 2 2. And so that is actually what plays at the end of our commercials and some of our social media, which is a recognizable song from our youth, which was shave and a haircut 2 bits. So a lot of our music is doot 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 doot, which is now synonymous with 2 2 2 2 2 2 2. So again, just me, having insomnia one night, going on Google, came up with our you call that a sonic brand. Is a musical brand is audio. It's called a sonic brand. So our sonic branding has now come to terms, and now on the radio or TV, if you hear dut 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 in my county, you may be thinking of our law firm.
It's great. It's really great. And again, just these little connections that you're making with people, their decision-making, their awareness. My background, in branding and marketing and making those connections, I think is so important. So, all right. Well, we talked about kind of some of the core components. Do you have any things that are keeping you up at night? I mean, anything that, I or my team or, even just in our brainstorm here, I mean, what are the big challenges that you could use some help with?
Well, I would say that since I was a young lawyer, the biggest challenge for people who are lawyers is that they're often control freaks, and it's hard to delegate. So the skill that was the hardest for me to learn, yet the most valuable for me to learn as an entrepreneur, was to balance the need for control with the need for delegation. And I listened to a couple podcasts specifically on the skill of delegation. And there's a couple that specifically are great. There's one by Ari Meisel, Arimeisel. And his podcast is, I think, The Art of Doing Nothing, or doing, that's what it is, the Doing Less podcast. And one of his podcasts is on the levels of delegation and how difficult each of them are. And he goes through the 6 different levels of delegating a task and the examples of each from easiest to hardest. And when I heard that the first time, it was like like, oh my gosh, he's right. He's just made a scientific study of how hard it is to delegate. And on that Doing Less podcast, I started to learn and be able to identify if I just give something to somebody and say, get it done, give it back, that's a level 1 delegation. That's really easy. But when you get to a level 6, I'll give you an example of a level 6 delegation. Hey, marketing director, go get our website redone and let me know when it's done. Now that's a level 6 because I didn't tell him how much to spend. I didn't tell him that I want to read anything or look at the homepage. I didn't tell him how to do it. I didn't tell him pick vendors and then I'll go through and demo all the vendors. I said, go get the website redone and let me know when it's done. Now that's impossible to do unless you've already mastered levels 1 through 5 of delegation. Nobody can do that because they want to be involved in all parts of redesigning the website. I got to that point a few years ago where I said, hey, marketing director, redo our website, let me know when it's done. And at that point, I knew that I at least built the 6 levels. Whether I comply with that all the time and stop being a micromanager, that's certainly hard. But I at least have mastered the ability to be able to understand the concept of a level 6 delegated task. And to me, that continues to be the hardest challenge, which is to let go and hire people and gain their trust enough to be able to do a lot of level 6 delegations. And once you can do that across your business, you've really gotten to a point where you allow yourself some freedom and you can take that vacation that's a month or 2 and you can do some of the things you might want to do apart from your company. And that's a point of total freedom, which is what we all say we want when we start a business, but nobody really ever gets there.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that's a delegation I maybe struggle with too. I'll have to listen to the Doing Less podcast because I certainly don't think I'm at the level 6 yet. I can imagine kind of being, a perfectionist, wanting those cases, wanting those clients, really dealt with in the high quality care that I know is really important to you. I mean, that would be very difficult. So having good people, which, I think that's, a kind of a training component, making sure that they understand the process. And I would say kind of done in the gold law way. Has that been something that you feel like the team does?
Really big time. So we realized early on that having the right people in the right seats and the right people on your bus are just absolutely one of the most important things. So we actually, because we are detailed here, we created a hiring, recruiting, and onboarding system that hopefully others can do. So once I designed it, I gave it up to HR and culture. And I said, okay, now we've designed this together. Now I can let it go. So we have, as I said, 80 staff, 10 lawyers. I'm only involved in the hiring process, the final portion of the hiring process with attorneys and with C-level employees, meaning a CEO, CFO, COO. So I've taken myself out of the hiring process because we created a system that hopefully includes everything that we want in everybody that works at our company. So having the right people and having a system to make sure you get the right people is it's the standard you need to have.
Are you doing any auditing, like where you come in and you just kind of drop in to see that the process is the way you want it and the people are being, the clients are being managed the way you want it? Are you?
Yes. Well, what's interesting is I audit the 4 people report to me. So we have an executive team of 5 people, including me. And the only people that report to me are 4 others. So the auditing is done in a tiered system, which is that So let's say those 4 people have supervisors or managers under them, who then in turn audit people below them. So I only need to see certain data. So I would never be auditing something that's a very low level data fact, but I have about 20 KPIs which I audit. And within those 20 KPIs are measures of whether systems are working. So if, for instance, a system is broken, it will show up in one of the 20 KPIs.
Makes sense.
So I don't audit the systems. I audit the results of the systems, which are the key performance indicators. I don't have time to audit systems. I have to audit results.
I
The
see.
people below me audit the systems.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. I was, in my attempt to think about this a little more broadly, I was thinking back to, maybe my days at General Mills where, the organization is so large, the CEO has to trust that the things made at the Yoplait plant are being done the right way in a food safe manner and with all of the, safety mechanisms in place. And certainly the CEO cannot audit every plant every day, et cetera. So I was sort of wondering, as you grow in this skill to delegate at a level 6, are there other industries where safety or compliance is so critical and it is kind of navigated through the chains? I don't know if there's anything there, but I was just thinking to myself, I wonder if there are folks out there, almost like a quality assurance type of manner, that would even be able to give you more trust that everything is being done exactly how you want it done.
Well, there's, I don't remember the book. It might be the 4 Disciplines of Execution, I forget, that talks about lag measures and lead measures. So a lag measure is a data point that comes after the occurrence. So for instance, with work safety, if you have 0 accidents at your plant, that's a lag measure, right? It comes after the situation. And a lag measure of 0 incidents at your plant is an audit of sorts because it's a KPI that reflects that you have good safety systems going on. So if you have 0 accidents, probably you have good systems or you just got lucky. If you have 100 accidents, you know that there's something broken in your systems. So the good CEO would be measuring the number, which is 0, not necessarily auditing the system. And if you get people involved in caring about the systems, that they're maybe financially incentivized or incentivized in some other way to have 0 accidents, then you're putting some money behind it. And you're also, if one of your passions is work safety and it's a core value of safe environment, if you have some sort of core value, then if you hire people who have the same core values of you that you do, then work safety might be something that they're impassioned about, and therefore it's going to be double likely that you're going to have very few work accidents.
So in that example, Craig, I mean, I don't know what it would be, but what in your mind would be a lead metric or a lead?
Well, the lead measures are what are your systems that are in place. In other words, so a lead measure there is something you do to prevent workplace accidents.
Got it.
So a lead measure could be, we bought 3,200 jigsaw covers to make sure that our 3,200 workers don't get hurt by the saw that they're using in the mill. So that's a lead measure, is that you've spent money, and it hopefully will produce a lag measure, which is 0 accidents. So a lead measure in that situation would be a proactive move, a proactive purchase of saw guards to prevent injuries. So that would be a lead measure.
So what would be a lead measure in your business to help with this accountability and this delegation?
A lead measure is the amount we spend on marketing. It hasn't produced anything yet. So we spent X millions of dollars in marketing in a year. That has produced nothing. It's merely a lead measure. So how much are you going to spend on marketing? How many people are you going to hire? What are your salaries? These are all lead measures. They haven't produced anything yet. You hope they do, but those are lead measures.
On the accountability front, though, I'm wondering for a lead, like you were describing your challenge that you continue to have, in your world, is that level 6 delegation. So I'm just trying to think of like lead measures that would allow you to know.
Sure. Well, the best businesses then meld at the end of the year their lead and their lag. So for instance, one way I measure or I combine and meld a lead and a lag is if I spent $1 million hypothetically on marketing and it produced 100 cases, that would be $100 per case. I think 10,000, whatever it is per case. You divide $1 million by whatever number of cases I said. So that's called acquisition cost per case. So the way you meld those two things together is you figure out if you're getting a cost per product, cost per case, that's an effective number.
Mhm.
So that's at the end of the year, whether you figure out whether your marketing was effective. So if you have 1,000 cases and you settled $1 million, then that means you got $1,000 per case, I think. So you know that your average fee per case was $1,000. So that's another melding at the end of the year. So
Right.
there's a purpose for having lead and lag measures, which is at the end of the year, you combine them and figure out meaningful data based on what your lead measures versus what they produced in lag.
Mhm.
And if it ends up that you spend money on TV and you got 0 cases, well, then from TV, you know that there's a mismatch between your lead and your lag, and therefore TV is not the best place for you to be.
In the example of accountability, would you say kind of like leading measures would be, are we running meetings effectively? Are we attending meetings? Are we staying connected? In which case, I know your firm is doing a great job with that, but that becomes kind of a measurement on the front end and then results on the back end?
Sure, there's some lead measures that don't necessarily have an ROI, a return on investment. So showing up for meetings, it's tough to produce a lag measure from that.
Gotcha.
But showing up for meetings, one would say that if everybody has the same value system and we have accountability as one of our core values, that it does result in a unified firm which is going to be successful. So it's hard to put an ROI on just showing up for meetings. But on the other hand, you know that there are certain corporate principles and certain things in a corporation which are definitely going to lead to success. And if people don't buy into the principle of showing up for a meeting, you've got problems. You don't have buy-in.
Got it. I'm going to keep thinking about this challenge, just because I'm interested in, and I've never read the book that you described on the lead and lag measures, but that's also
well, the 4 Disciplines of Execution is one of my favorite books that I read early,
cool.
And it really produced a lot of good metrics and data for how I run my company. And then another one by Pat Lencioni, great business author, is 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which talks about trust. So when you're learning how to delegate, don't only listen to podcasts. You really got to study the concept of trust, because all of delegation is based on trust or lack thereof. And the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is a wonderful business book, very well-known book that talks about how you establish trust before you can be able to comfortably delegate.
That's great. Really great. Okay, I have a tangent question that is a little bit unrelated to what we're talking about, but it relates to what you talked about at the very beginning. So, I'm just curious, for women attorneys, this is relating back to what you said about your mom, seeing the challenges that she was faced. Do you think that's getting any better? Have you seen a change in that through the years?
I have. I in a way, I think the problem is that the concept of motherhood still exists, and in a male's head, the risk of hiring a female and then dealing with the choice that a female might ultimately have to make about staying home or not, that risk is still there. And so that's still in males' heads. And as long as males are still running companies, it's hard for them to remove that from their heads if someone might be of childbearing age. Once you get past that age, I think that stigma is erased for most males, to be candid, because that woman has already made her choice. So I think that is the biggest hang up in our society of hiring younger females, because males are still left in the mindset of, am I going to lose this woman to motherhood?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I have a couple of clients around the country right now that are law firms, and they are hiring women who may have left their law degree, and they are fantastic intake attorneys because it's a more flexible arrangement for them. And so it's kind of fun to see people be creative with it, but it obviously does create perhaps the fear of losing someone, the fear of, kind of having that work not be met by the same person as they go into becoming a mom. It's very true.
It's true. It's a part of the reality. But yeah, there are lots of creative ways. I've had female attorneys at my company, but there's still that stigma, I guess, in our career, and in any career that is the career itself is a jealous mistress, and that it'll eat you up and make you work 70 hours a week if you let it. And that's true whether you're male or female.
Good
Yeah,
point.
professional services is a tough industry to balance with your family life at all, whether you're female or male.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for those who have continued to be creative, obviously, as a woman. So that's cool. Well, okay. So anything else that you want to ask me, or any other components of your business that you want to share? I know you have a mastermind coming up.
Sure. So for the past 7 years, I've run a one-day seminar, and it's called the 7-Figure Attorney. And I named it that because one of my early goals as a young attorney was to have $1 million, which is 7 figures in gross revenue. And that's a lot of people's goals. I mean, that's a lot of money to gross 7 figures, $1 million in fees or in income at the end of the year. So I remember when I was young, that was one of my first goals. So I named it the 7-Figure Attorney. The website is 7figureattorney.com, spell out the number 7, 7figureattorney.com. And this year we're doing it on Thursday, April 11th in Boston. That's 2024. It's a one-day seminar, and it's the only personal injury seminar I'm aware of where one law firm, being mine, basically opens up all our techniques and secrets to 100 or more, might be 150 law firms this year in Boston. And I'm the main speaker. I speak 4 times about 4 different topics, a lot of them involving what I talked about today, whether it's compensation models, KPIs, how to scale and grow. And all of my topics apply no matter what size law firm you are. And then my other speaker is my chief marketing officer, and he focuses on how to market for solo and small firms and even medium firms. And then my other speaker is the woman I spoke about earlier from Disney World, Michelle, who is now our Chief Culture Officer. So she's CCO at our company, Chief Culture Officer. So she talks about the techniques she's used to make it what she calls the happiest workplace on earth, playing off the Disney slogan, the happiest place on earth.
That's great.
So she talks about that. So it's only 3 speakers, and we have a really awesome guest speaker this year, a 4th speaker, which is my wife. And she's going to come in this year and talk about your identity as a lawyer and provider is bullshit. That's actually the topic of her speech, because she wants to tell a cautionary tale of allowing your business to swallow up your life at the expense of your spouse and children. And I've tried to surf that as well as I could. I failed in some areas because I'm an entrepreneur, but she's actually going to be very vulnerable about me and about her in making sure that you're aware of the way a business, even a well-run business, can take over your life to the exclusion of your family. So again, one of the only speakers I know who lets someone get up there and dump all over them. It's because she's going to get up there and tell the truth, which is we've struggled in some areas with work-life balance. And I know there's not going to be a person in the room who does not struggle with work-life balance if they own a law firm. So those are the 4 speakers this year in Boston, April 11th. It's called the 7-Figure Attorney. It is only a one-day seminar. And the reason we do it on a Thursday is for work-life balance, which is please bring your spouse or kids and spend the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in Boston doing some fun stuff. So we always pick it on a Thursday, and we do it in a city that you may want to go on a vacation to.
That's great.
So spring in Boston's great. We've done Manhattan, we've done Chicago, we've done Atlanta. So we try to make it a family-friendly event, and you're only busy one day. You're only busy on Thursday. So if you bring your family, you can spend Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in whatever day, in whatever city we pick.
That's great. Well, we had talked about it, so I'm coming. So
Wonderful.
Count me in. I'll be there. Maybe I'll bring my husband. We'll see. That'd be
Sounds
really
like a good idea. If you like Boston, Boston's a great city. That's why we picked it.
Well, Craig, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being willing to kind of, first of all, trust me to be a part of your, business world, your team. It's been such a pleasure to see your team develop over the years, to be a part of in a small way, but really, really fun to see you guys grow and scale. And thank you for being on today. Thank you for being willing to share your
Sara,
story.
I must say you've been a lot more than a small part of our growth. You've been an instrumental part of our growth in helping me scale and delegate and help my life become a better life. And I want to thank you for that too.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people have written a lot of great books, Craig, but I kind of find that you have to have a partner to help you execute it too, right? And um, so I love reading. I just like you do. And I think, again, so many great books out there. Making it come to life on a daily basis sometimes is harder than people anticipate. So having a partner in crime, I've been happy to be there to just say, remember what the book said?
Right. Well, I think accountability, a lot of accountability is based on a relationship and someone you trust. You wouldn't read a book and then go to war and protect the fellow people in your platoon based on what you've read, but you would based on your relationship with those folks. So
Yeah.
when I have partners like you or other partners that are people, they go to war with me and I go to war with them. And that's not based on reading. It's based on my partnership and my trust.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. It's been a true honor. And I think the future is so bright for Gold Law in whatever capacity. I think, it's especially fun to watch you grow in I'm going to use my fingers, but I really believe it, the right way, right? To make sure your people are happy and healthy, to make sure your clients have the quality of care that they deserve, and to watch you really serve your community. It's been pretty fun to see. So with that, I shall see you soon, I'm sure, but definitely in Boston. And thank you again for joining the podcast today.
Fantastic. And just send me a bill for the golden rule pointer you gave me.
There you go.
I'll be utilizing that in some way in the next month.
I have the trademark attorney in the background trademarking it. So
it's too late. I just texted somebody that it's already been done. Sorry. I beat you to...
That's good. That's good. Well, have a great rest of the day and enjoy your 25th anniversary. And I will see you and your wife and your team in Boston.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for having me on.
Yes, Craig. Thank you again. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Level Up Your Business with me, Sara Frasca. If you have a problem in your business that's keeping you up at night, please join us in a future episode so we can help get you unstuck. Just click in the link in the show notes and send us a message. Please remember, stay innovative, friends.